Welcome to Culture Meets Crypto, a podcast by Signum Growth that dives into the intersection of gaming, art, AI, and crypto. Listen to hear Angela and Evan speak with iconic thinkers, thought leaders, and CEOs about the many new economies and business models which are bubbling up in the metaverse.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of Culture Meets Crypto with our special guest, Aber Whitcomb, co-founder of MySpace, Jam City, and now the exciting new launch of PLAI Labs. It's always so inspirational, Evan, to hear what happened behind the scenes in these early days of startups like MySpace and all of those kind of obstacles that founders have to overcome. I loved hearing about Aber talk about the lack of bandwidth in those early days and the fact that he had to run down to the data center and manually add servers to meet demand. He's just a legend when it comes to the video game space, but many have really forgotten that he was also a road maker in social media. And then, of course, hearing the story about how he sold his company to Rupert Murdoch after 2 years was also so fascinating.
I think the discussion we had with them really makes it apparent about how Play Labs and really gaming as a whole has the potential to be kind of its own social network, its own interactive social network. Because we've seen multiplayer games where people can chat and become friends online. But in the case of Champions Ascension, which is Play Labs' first Web3 game, the new features created by AI and Web3 are super cool. So first off, Aber kind of hints that players will be able to create their own playable dungeons, much like what we've seen in Minecraft, Roblox, or Fortnite creative mode. But because it's on blockchain, people can really, truly own their content. And then in the background of these dungeons and other areas of the game, there are these AI NPCs, which are non-player characters, essentially robots that you can play against, which learn based on how you react with them and helps the game evolve along with the players. And then, of course, NFTs come in again, allowing players to trade and form collector communities around the many different winnings and achievements that they get by playing the game.
So true. And Evan, you just said the hot button word NFTs. Aber also touches in this podcast on the effects of the volatile crypto market and how their company's strategy has evolved around this. This is a common theme we're really hearing from game developers. We don't use the word NFT anymore. We use the word digital collectibles. And the bottom line is that the game development cycles really don't match up with crypto cycles. They're creating a game and building a game and making a game really fun and engaging takes a lot longer to build, hopefully because it will last a long time. That is compared to the very fast-paced narratives in crypto, especially in the PFP or profile pick market, which is really more of a trading game in our view. So thanks again to all of our listeners, and thank you, Aber, Chris, Josh, and the entire founding team at PLAI Labs. I'm very excited today to have here with my co-host, Evan Castelli, Aber Whitcomb, a founder of MySpace, Jam City, and most recently PLAI Labs. We are so excited to talk to you, Aber, because you've always been an innovator in the digital space. You've tapped into, obviously, a lot of new technologies, but social media, blockchain, AI, and you always seem to be earlier than the crowd. So there's clearly a thread here that ties all of these together. So would love to hear just about you and your history with technology and how you think all of these technologies kind of tie together.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. And yeah, it's good to see you guys again. Yeah, so I've had a long history with technology. I'm actually kind of one of the gray hairs of the internet now because I've been doing it for so long. I started off way back in the 90s when I graduated from University of Washington with math and computer science. I was recruited by Chris DeWolf to come down to LA to work at a company called XDrive, that's an interesting story, but it's basically the 1999 version of Dropbox that ended up not working.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so that's where we met and started working together. And then, of course, the bubble burst at that time, and pretty much every internet company blew up at that time. So Chris and I actually started a smaller advertising company where we were figuring out how to monetize the internet with ads, and it started to do pretty
Wow.
well.
I just
Yeah,
have to pause there for a second. I'm not going to interrupt you going forward, but monetize the internet.
right. Yeah, well, it's so crazy because you know, in the first iteration of the internet, people weren't thinking about monetizing. They really had no idea how to make money. They were just coming up with ideas anywhere from, you know, e-commerce to you know, birthday cake. I even saw a company that was making birthday cakes on the internet, but no one really knew how to do it. So we were really trying to figure out how to make money through ads. We created an ad agency, an ad network, and got into e-commerce. That started to do pretty well, and we actually sold it after a year to a company called eUniverse. Shortly after that, we started to look at new ways to make money on the internet, but primarily high traffic opportunities. And we noticed Friendster was doing pretty well. We didn't like Friendster. They were trying to make a dating site out of it, and we thought this could be a lot more fun and a lot more innovative. And we actually created MySpace at that time. So this was 2003, and you know, we had no idea what it would turn into at that time, but it really blew up. Facebook, Friendster wasn't doing very well. They were kind of crashing under the load, and so everyone was just pouring into MySpace, and that's really where I cut my teeth as a computer scientist and an entrepreneur, and figuring out how to scale, you know, large scale infrastructure and websites. So that was a lot of fun. And in those days, it's interesting to think about, you know, the cloud, the public cloud didn't exist back then. So we had to do everything ourselves. And, you know, I became like a very good network engineer, a very good data center operations engineer. We were running everything. And, you know, in fact, we'd max out servers and load balancers and ISPs so much that I would sometimes just have to get up out of my desk, drive downtown, and go to the data center and start installing servers myself because we were growing so fast. Yeah, and it's funny.
What year was that? What year was that
was
roughly?
2003, 2004.
2003,
Yeah,
2004.
yeah.
Wow. I mean, I would love to hear a story. I really want to get to PLAI Labs because we're all about gaming, as you know, but I would love to hear a story about 2005 and this, you know, entering into the deal with News Corp. And I remember at the time, because I've been in tech since, you know, 1999. And at the time there was this, you know, I was surrounded by research analysts and buy side investors, and people are like, oh, they're just, you know, they're buying the younger generation, they're buying the younger audience, and you know, it's kind of a hedge or whatever. But that must have just been, I just would love to hear kind of fly on the wall. What was that
Yeah.
like?
I mean, it was pretty crazy. You know, we were obviously the fastest growing website out there, and you know, we were on the cover of all these magazines, Wired, and so we had a lot of suitors. There was actually a bidding war for MySpace, and we had only been running it for 2 years, and you know, we had Viacom and News Corp were kind of the final bidders, and we decided to go with Rupert Murdoch. And the deal closed in very quick, in like a week. And you know, it's for like it was about a $650 million deal, which at the time was amazing.
At the time,
I mean,
huge.
you know,
huge.
it was
Yeah.
it was only a company that we'd started 2 years ago, and nobody had sold you know, a company on the internet for a very long time, since the bubble had burst. And so we were very happy with it. All of a sudden, we were kind of the shining stars of News Corp and Fox. They were the same
Yeah.
company at the time, and it was really cool. I mean, I got to know Rupert very well.
I was going to ask if he got involved in the negotiations and was in the trenches on the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, we got to, you know, I mean, he was very interested in what we were doing. He poured a ton of resources into what we were doing. We were spending a lot of money, but we were actually making quite a bit too. but we got to use his plane to fly around the world to start international offices, and see how someone like that actually operates. It's pretty impressive. Got to meet Tony Blair, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And then also just that time we were scaling people a lot too. So my team was growing. At one point I had 800 people. So going from a 4-person company to where my department is actually 800 people, you learn a lot through that process too. You're not just scaling machines, but you're scaling process and communication and dealing with a lot of personnel.
Yeah,
It was
it's
a
just
pretty
so
exciting time.
interesting. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it's pretty interesting to me that now, some of the social media, massive social media companies like Facebook are now trying to buy into the next generation's behavior, and that kind of is a repeating, theme, and it's like almost like a normal cycle. And so I'm on the board of FaZe Clan. I don't know if you know that, but when I talk to fellow, portfolio managers at, big mutual funds and hedge funds that I've known for 20 years, they don't even know how to spell phase. I mean, and it's amazing to me that these cycles keep happening and that people still don't feel too comfortable being out there in this behavior that they don't totally understand. So we'll talk to us about Jam City. So that was Jam City was 2010, correct?
That's right. Yep. So
Okay.
yeah, so we were locked up with News Corp to continue running MySpace. By 2010, the story was pretty much over for us. We started to clash too much with the Fox people, and disagreements over spending, and Facebook was clipping at our heels, and it was pretty nuts. Like we were doing about $1 billion in revenue at the time, and expected to put about 300 to the bottom line. And meanwhile, Facebook was spending 300 million with no revenue, and we clearly had to change, but we couldn't do that. So by 2010, we decided to leave, start something new. We determined we wanted to get into games mainly because we had saw Zynga. Zynga started on MySpace, and we saw how much money they were doing, how they're engaged their users were, and we were kind of envious of that model, and so we decided to get into social games, and that's how Jam City started. We at the time it was Facebook was the dominant games platform, so we were. There was mobile apps, but it wasn't really a thing at the time. So we were building games for Facebook. We were doing very well. We generated a large audience, and then as mobile gaming started to gain a little bit of traction, we transitioned into mobile pretty well, very efficiently. We're one of the first ones to. The first cohort of companies that were building pretty good games for mobile. So, slowly but surely, we started to get better at building games, better at user acquisition, really understanding data. With games in particular, you really have to understand exactly how users are behaving and what types of users you want to acquire. So once you have a good product, that's the most important. Then you really have to get into the data, and that's where I focused a lot of my time, is in data science and building a world-class data team that could understand not only how to run campaigns to acquire users, but exactly how those users behave, and if we want those types of users, and then eventually started applying AI and machine learning to some of the things we're doing inside Jam City as well.
Okay, so you're already using AI and machine learning, and it's not just the phenomenon of ChatGPT that has gotten you excited about AI. I would love for you to comment on kind of user acquisition in gaming and how that is changing, and how technology is really triggering that change. And the other thing that is tangential to this is the behavior in Web3 is very different than in games we all know that have hundreds of millions of players right now. So I just love your comment on that before we get into PLAI Labs.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah, I mean, you used to be able to target specific users on mobile, and then Apple started to take some of that functionality away for privacy purposes. So that was really a big line in user acquisition on mobile. That's really where the companies that were more equipped with real data science teams were more successful, right? Because you couldn't just specifically target individual users and keep track of them. You really had to understand kind of behavior and how to create segmentation of those behavioral units. So, I mean, it's really changed in that you can no longer just go out and develop a good game and on mobile, because you're not guaranteed that anyone's going to see it. You absolutely have to have a user acquisition budget and a strategy for pretty much any games or maybe any app now. So that's how I've seen it evolve. With Web3 in particular, it's interesting. It's still very early in Web3. There is a universe of users that have wallets. They understand crypto. They may have a funded wallet, and so if you can onboard and target those users into a Web3 product, you're obviously way ahead. But I think the big challenge for Web3 and what we're focusing on a lot is how to introduce Web2 players to Web3 with very low friction. And right now, I think that barrier is too high, and we're building a lot of things at PLAI and Champions that we feel like can onboard people faster into that experience.
Well, that's really great. I mean, one of our themes is merging onto the highway of behavior that is already happening, because that is a lot easier in any kind of tech transition. So just would love for you to get into your vision for PLAI Labs. And this is very exciting news, very new news, and we're excited to hear you talk about it.
Yeah, sure. So I've personally been interested in crypto and blockchain for maybe 5 years now, and getting involved with other companies. So I've had a good understanding of it for quite some time. And when I saw an opportunity to introduce Web3 at Jam City, I jumped at it and was able to really help build that division at Jam City. And at first, we were thinking of ways to try to introduce blockchain, or maybe let's call it NFTs, to an existing user base, like a Web2 or a casual game. And I think we ended up thinking that was going to be very difficult, especially for a well-established game. And so we made the decision to develop a blockchain native game called Champions Ascension. This was a year and a half ago at Jam City. Champions Ascension was always kind of meant to be a little bit more of a hardcore MMO style game, where we're going to have very robust lore and players, or call them champions, that would take the form of NFTs on the blockchain. So as we started to develop that game over time, we also started to develop a whole kind of blockchain strategy and how we felt like we were going to scale this game. During that time, we did an NFT auction that did well, and then I'll pause there. Then we started PLAI Labs and spun Champions out from there.
Okay. So it is time zero with Web3. I totally agree with that. Web3 gaming. This first wave, we had William Intrican on the show who finalized the ERC 721 standard, and we bonded back in 2018 over this idea of, players have been buying, selling, trading digital assets for decades. This is so perfect for gaming. And he said at the time, this was in 2018, he said, though, this first wave is going to be it's going to get pretty ugly. There's going to be a lot of speculation, a lot of money grabs. And he was dead right. I mean, this was not what I came for. This is not what we came for at Signum. So I think that you said a couple of things that I think really resonated in terms of this, ease of migration. So it's early in Web3. We agree with that. On AI, we just love, I mean, you're really one of the first to do this. Like, how do you envision AI kind of, is it going to be new characters are created by AI? Is it going to be players getting involved in AI? What's
Yeah.
what is it going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been fascinated by the power of AI. I'm a data scientist myself. That's what I went to school for. And even back in the 90s, we were studying AI. And the algorithms are actually largely the same as they are today. What's really changed is the hardware that's allowed us to do this types of processing, really in the form of the GPUs. So the reason why everyone's talking about AI now is because the hardware has become so incredibly powerful that you can train these massive models that kind of seem like magic, right? Like ChatGPT, right? So it's very powerful. You definitely need to know how to use it. And it's really in the form of how do you apply it to get what you're looking for out of it. And in the context of a game, especially a game like Champions, we have a lot of NPC type opportunities where we want to have some of these battles where the players actually learn the different strategies and techniques that are happening. So we're applying reinforcement learning algorithms to how the players behave in the game. That's a very, very cool thing. There's actually a battle mode coming out where 3 real players can battle this NPC boss, and they have to come up with a strategy for how to battle that boss. But this boss is smart, and so it's going to get and he'll get smarter over time, and you'll need to apply different strategies. So we're using that to make the game more fun and keep people engaged. There's also, I'm sure you've heard of stable diffusion and generative art. So incredibly powerful. Again, only available because of recent innovations with hardware. They trained stable diffusion on, I think it was 2.2 billion images or something like that. So an insane amount of processing. We're using some of that technology in the games as well. Actually, today in the alpha version of Champions, you can go in and we've trained stable diffusion in the Champions world, and you can go in and create a generative art experience. We're eventually going to allow you to create NFTs with those, and then we're also working on generative art that will be used to actually design parts of the levels. So we want to put that power into the players where they can use generative art to design their own dungeon, for example, that other people can come and play. So we're applying in a lot of different areas right now.
I love it. That is so cool because the players want to create, and we're seeing that in the early numbers across a lot of games. So that's exciting. How does this work with big IPs? I mean, you've harnessed IP from a lot of different properties: Harry Potter, Disney, Frozen, many more. Evan and I were brainstorming this earlier and thinking, what happens when AI is involved and all of a sudden new assets and art, as you just mentioned, is created? Is it better to go down this path with your own lore, your own game, like Champions? Is that why you did it in that way? Or do you see a future where we will see, kind of those traditional IP brands coming in?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the traditional brands will come in. I mean, our strategy with Jam City was always, we always had a 50-50 approach where 50% of our titles would be completely in-house developed IP and 50% would be licensed.
Okay.
And there's pros and cons to each one, right? If you develop your own IP and it's successful, you get a lot more out of it. Obviously, you can create
Right.
an evergreen franchise, and you don't have to share the revenue with anyone. Partnering with IP, obviously, you get a built-in fan base and brand recognition that is also very powerful. So for us, developing our own IP first made the most sense, and if we develop more titles down the road, we may partner with well-known IP. But the vision of Champions is actually more than just one game. It's actually this kind of whole virtual world that will be extensible. So we're going to be able to bring in other titles, potentially other IP into that world, where the centerpiece will be the combat arena, but we already have other mini games in the experience, and we could potentially easily bring in well-known IP to live in that world.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, with AI, I think I can definitely see like Nike, for example, somehow sponsoring a generative art competition where people are creating very cool, the next Nike swoosh or the next Nike shoes with generative art. I mean, they're going to get into it. And it'll be really cool when they do.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I think there will be more time spent. I mean, kind of an increasing amount of time spent by players in games. There's just going to be more and more things to do, more and more tools to learn how to use to create new aspects to games. And, this does really kind of harken back to social media behavior and shifting to measuring time spent versus, the traditional game metrics with players. And I think that, it's really interesting to think about the idea that it's an authentic space where brands can get involved, and especially if they're there in the form of NFTs, kind of NFT characters or NFTs that are characters that are kind of enhanced by the brand. It's a lot more authentic than the social media conflict of interest we have between consumers of content and creators of content. So do you think about gaming as kind of the next social media platform?
Gamers have always been just an amazing test bed for new technology. They've really kind of driven a lot of technology. It's really that's where GPUs came from. Gamers want low latency. They want the fastest PCs, and they're willing to experiment with new technology. So we love gaming as a genre to build some of the tools that we are envisioned. But really, PLAI Labs is it's really, we look at it as a social media company. We want to use all of the experience that we have with social media and building companies and create social experiences. And we will definitely do that with Champions. It's a very social game. But we also are going to use blockchain and AI as tools to create other social experiences as well. We really look at ourselves as a social first company that will be building other products, based around these amazing technologies. I mean, we really believe it. The blockchain as an example. I mean, we really believe in the true ownership economy. With Chris and I, it resonated immediately. Yes, people should own these digital assets. They shouldn't be captive in in one game or one experience. There should be a secondary market. And so we want to enable that for all of our players. AI is going to dramatically improve people's lives, experiences online and even offline, and we're going to apply the latest technologies for that. Yeah, but you know, our passion really is connecting people and giving people amazing social experiences.
It's just so exciting to think about the idea of true ownership plus experience unlock,
Right.
you know, that come from NFTs. And then if you layer AI onto that, you'll get experiences that'll surprise and delight that you might not even have expected. But behaviorally, you do expect.
That's
Your
right.
brain might expect them. But I did want to ask, just overlap wise in Champions, which is the game that is really the core of Play Labs right now. Do you see, is it mainly, are the players mainly Web 2 players or I guess traditional gamers, or are they crypto native mostly and you're kind of, you
Yeah.
know, or is an overlap?
Great question. Yeah. So the initial cohort of players that we have right now are definitely crypto native. They are, you know, we did a Ethereum native drop. So, you know, people are pretty much expected to have their own MetaMasks and have that funded. So, and those were the people that we were targeting because they tend to be early adopters and they like these types of projects. But really, that's not how we're going to be able to scale. We're going to scale by bringing in Web 2 players into this experience, which by the way is the experience first. We don't consider this necessarily this crypto project. This is a kind of an experience first, very high quality, AAA quality that we think everyone will like. And the way we'll introduce people into the Web3 experience is by giving them a wallet if they don't have a wallet, showing them exactly how to fund that wallet if it's not funded, you know, helping them with the custody of assets in a very user-friendly way, but then having it all be on the blockchain. So if you want to get into the more hardcore blockchain technologies, you can do that. But the next phase of Champions will be that really ease of onboarding Web 2 customers.
Angie and I, before coming on here, we watched a ton of your videos, or a lot of the Champions Ascension videos and the Play Economy videos with Squiddy. I'd love to hear from your perspective what you're most excited about, the blockchain aspects kind of allowing players to do, or some of the new behaviors that might come out of adding blockchain and NFTs to a new experience.
We sold the Prime Eternals first, which we said are the most powerful champions in the game, and they always will be. They're the champions that actually can't die in the game. So that was, you know, there's a few thousand of those that are held by the people that were willing to pay for them. And the next phase is actually going to be we're going to use some breeding mechanics where you can use those Prime Eternals to create less powerful champions, and that's how we plan on scaling the game, which is you know, those new champions will go to new players, and those champions won't be as powerful. They can die, but we're going to give you a path to level them up. And what I think is so cool about that is that most of this logic will be on chain, where it's completely transparent. People can see it happening. You know, there's you know, we really believe in the transparency of the blockchain, where when we say we're going to do something, you can go and check and see that it's true. And we really like that relationship with our players, just because there's been so many other, I think, crypto projects that have been rug pulls, or, you know, maybe they're inexperienced teams that say they're going to do something, but they don't know how to do it or something. And for us, we feel like we're really differentiating on our relationship with the players, where we're building trust, and also on our ability to create an extremely high quality experience.
Some of these kind of core attributes of crypto that we've seen so far, like these early projects where there's a fixed number, 10,000, assets, it's not even a rounding error in gaming. So the idea that it's democratizing doesn't make sense to a lot of gamers. So how will you balance that? Because there is the rarity factor of NFTs and your community's crypto. But hopefully this game is going to go after hundreds of millions of users. And how will you think about these the scarcity and the early players versus the people who come in maybe in, a year or two?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that has to do with data science and statistics. So, you really want to have a plan before you go into opening this up to the public. But we're also very careful about rewarding those early adopters. We really want them to feel important and powerful. So, I mean, they'll also, as new players come on, there'll be new NFTs that come into the game. There'll be multiple different classes of NFTs, and there'll be a kind of a graduated system for upgrading those NFTs, which is just it's called systems design in games. What you do is you build out specific systems, you allocate certain amounts of resources, and then you actually simulate that with thousands of users. And for us, that's in our wheelhouse. We've done that. We've been doing that, since we started Jam City. And so I think we feel like this is another differentiator in Web3, where we're bringing true AAA game development into this space, where we're pretty confident that we can scale an economy because of the types of systems that we put in place.
Were there any unexpected responses you had when you released the first collection? I know you guys obviously thought of different responses that people could have and sort of catered to that. But was there anything where you guys were like, oh man, okay, we have to rethink our approach to NFTs, how people are thinking of it?
Well, I mean, probably one of the craziest things that we've had to do is, we've had to adjust our strategy a little bit with, the crypto market, which is not something that you normally have to do in traditional games. So, initially we had kind of visions of having multiple different types of fungible tokens, for example, in the game. And I think we've had to adjust our strategy a little bit based on some of the things that have happened in crypto over the past year. And we're an American company servicing a lot of Americans, and so we're very much in the jurisdiction of the SEC. So we're not trying to skirt around any any regulatory issues, and that's, I think we've changed our strategy and our economy a little bit in response to that. But in terms of feedback from the players, it's actually been pretty positive, just because there's not a lot of examples of, I don't know if you've seen the videos, so there's not a lot of examples where you can actually buy an NFT and go in and experience the combat right now. It's not done, and we tell people it's not done, but it's still pretty good. And so I think within kind of this current universe of Web3 games, we feel very comfortable and confident that we're providing a good experience, and it'll only get better.
And the goal is obviously that you won't really have to rely on the crypto markets affecting how people play the game or anything like that. It's going to be its own interesting thing that people are drawn to.
That's right. Yeah, no, I should say that the economy won't be dependent on the crypto market, but our strategy had changed a little bit from it, and how we introduce tokens and things. Yeah.
We've separately, I don't know if I had mentioned this before, but we are advisors to the Web3 Foundation on the launch of Polkadot. So we've had, dozens of meetings with the SEC, and kind of in that, they don't give guidance, but of course you present things and then they respond. And you kind of get herded a little bit onto the right path. And there are also securities laws that have been around for a long time that people can follow. And so, I have always felt that, usability is really important. And it seems like, or usability of any kind of token in a game, versus, some NFTs that are investment contracts from the outset because they're set up as yield instruments. And so that's good to hear that you're already thinking through a lot of those issues, because I think a lot of people are experimenting right now and building. And, sometimes it really is, complete ignorance if you're a experimenter, engineer, startup person
Right.
to be thinking about securities laws, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, no,
but
it's interesting. Yeah, and we've got, A16Z has been a really fantastic partner. They have a great crypto team, so they're already helping us a lot with how to properly decentralize certain protocols that
mhm,
put you within maybe a different light for certain regulatory.
yep. So the idea, though, big picture, is that crypto or just like the wallet, the experience of NFTs will be a little bit more front and center. It's not, is it going to be happening in the background? Will people have wallets?
Oh, right. Yeah. No, people will have wallets, but the on-ramp for getting a wallet will basically be nothing, like signing up for a normal game. And so,
Hmm.
there's certain wallets that require a browser plugin, for example, and you might need to restart your machine or write something down. And we're avoiding all that for most of our players, because we just think that's too much friction for someone that wants to get into a fun experience. So we are creating wallets, but it will for people that are inexperienced with crypto, it will be much more of a friendly experience. We'll show you that, hey, here's the inventory that you have. Tell them that you have custody of this and these are your assets, but make sure that it's extremely easy to understand and use.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to ask one final fun question. Well, maybe this isn't fun for some people, but your business model in 5 years, do you think it's more impacted by blockchain, NFTs in the game, or do you think it's that AI is really the story here in terms of the new wave of gaming?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've actually I've thought about that, and if I had to guess of the trajectory that things are moving with AI, I really feel like AI is going to play a huge part in our business, and probably almost every business that we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about that is successful. I think the blockchain is definitely not going anywhere, and I think it's becoming more and more integrated into people's lives, and and I think NFTs will also be pretty commonplace, where maybe even my kids will be able to program smart contracts without even worrying about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it is moving in that direction, but I think the momentum of AI is incredibly strong right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. Well, Aber, thank you so much for coming. This was great. It's so exciting to get a window into PLAI Labs. And after all of your success in your career, we're all very excited to watch how this unfolds. And, and potentially even the next story after, the next chapter after PLAI Labs. So
Yeah.
anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to
All
come
right.
on to
Thank you
Culture Meets
so much.
Crypto.